Chapter 5, School. What? Saberclaw yelled. She was training in the new training room at the team's base. The base was the hangar with new extensions added to it to accommodate the bots since they were a team now. It was also given a cloaking system so that no one could find them. Saberclaw had been training when Sam had walked in and called her down from her flying obstacle course and told her possibly the most insane thing she thought she would ever hear. Saber, it's no big deal. Going to school isn't hard. You already know everything they will try to teach you due to your database, and you'll be there with Lila too. Of course, you won't be in the same grade because Alea passes as a 10th grader and Lila is in 8th grade. Besides, I already signed you up. Saberclaw shook her head violently in retaliation. No, I don't consent to going to high school. I'm not doing that. Not after what I hear every day from Lila after her school day, she exclaimed. It had been nearly a month since Saberclaw first came online, and she had heard rants from Lila about middle and high schoolers. Look, Saberclaw, you don't have a choice. People are starting to ask questions. People never question a student, at least not with the questions they have. It is a risk, and it will complicate things a lot. I get it, but I have to send a normal teenage girl to school, okay? He had made up his mind and didn't intend to let Saberclaw change it, so he started walking out of the training room. Saberclaw saw this and knew she probably couldn't change his mind, so she switched tactics. Sam, please. She begged from behind him as he walked away. He reached the doorway and turned to face her before closing the door. Saberclaw, you start school as Alea at 8 in the morning tomorrow. You can walk there with Lila. Saberclaw put her hands on her head in despair as the door closed. She turned back toward the obstacle course. Ugh, what am I going to do? She asked herself. I can't go on missions if I am in school 6 hours a day. She was contemplating her escape maneuver for the next morning while doing a few stretches for more training when the door slid open again. You're going to school with me. Lila ran in and waved at Saber, who also greeted her. Saberclaw turned into Alea and did the special handshake with Lila. The two had been working on it for the past month, and Alea was very proud of it. However, she will never admit it. Yeah, I am. Fun. Alea said sarcastically. Ugh, I can't believe your dad is making me do this. Alea rolled her eyes. Lila looked at her smugly. It isn't that bad, Alea. Sure, there's a few mean kids, but you're going to love it, she exclaimed confidently. You just want me to go to your school willingly. Alea sighed. Yeah, that's a big part of it. Lila shrugged in response. It isn't the mean kids I'm worried about. I mean, I can literally crush them. She gestured as she spoke. Lila, however, looked unsure. But you won't, right? Alea ignored Lila's question and continued. It's just, I want to be able to go on missions during school hours. Lila tilted her head suspiciously as she asked again. Alea, you won't crush them, right? Alea sighed heavily as she answered. No, of course not. Lila nodded with content. Okay, that's what I want to hear. I'm sure there's a good share of missions that you won't miss. You're going to love Grove Academy. She walked out, but this time, Alea decided to abandon her daily workout. She followed Lila into the hall, still as Alea. Lila realized this and slowed down to be walking beside her friend. Oh, I forgot to show you. Silverspot added something new to the hangar. Alea raised her eyebrows with intrigue. Lila challenged. You want to race down the hall? Giant robot turned human. Lila continued to tease as she took a head start. Oh, you're on. Alea answered confidently as she started running, but Lila was very far ahead of her. This wasn't a problem for Alea. Over the past few weeks, she had mastered her human form. Alea's eyes lit up to an unnatural green, and she ran faster than Olympic runners, using a little of her Sentiron energy that was usually reserved for her robot form. She passed Lila in heartbeat, and when Lila finally reached the end of the hallway, Saberclaw had been waiting. You're such a cheater. Lila laughed through heavy breaths. Ha, you're just a sore loser. Alea shot back, also laughing. Lila actually didn't mind losing, since it was impossible to win a fair race against a Sentiron. She just didn't like the fact that Alea would never be panting no matter how fast and far she ran. She knew it was out of both of their control, but it still wasn't fair to Lila that Saberclaw didn't have to breathe. Alea smacked the button that opened the door to the hangar. The door opened to reveal the hangar, But instead of the two tubes that were originally there, an elevator to the roof was in the middle of the hangar beside a large console and screens. The wall was completely repaired, and the consoles that lined the walls had been replaced by balconies so the humans could get to the bots' level in conversation. The day was almost over, and Lila's father was already asleep. Lila actually was on her way to bed when she decided to go see Saberclaw. Since the Sentiron don't sleep, they just go out on patrol and find ways to entertain themselves. For example, Sam had a large clearing cut out from the woods behind the hangar that was basically the size of 2 football fields so that the robots could have space to try recreational games. Probably the most popular game they played the most was something the humans called Monkey in the middle. The bots loved it and they would play it for hours, but it had a twist to it. They were all allowed to use their wings. Basically, every time one of them would end up either toppled over on top of another, or Iron Stripe would end up running Saberclaw over. That last one had happened more times than the Green Sentiron would ever admit due to his size and lack of care for her safety. He was the type who refused to lose no matter who was in his way. Well, I'm gonna go to bed, guys. Lila called to the bots. Silver Spot was working on something in the corner of the hangar with Iron Stripe looming over her. Silver Spot waved dismissively and answered, "All right, have a nice night, Lila." Lila waved in response before closing the door to exit the hangar. Alea waved as well, but Lila was already gone. She walked over to Silver Spot to see what she was working on, pushed Iron Stripe's large metal boot out of the way like he was an annoying roommate who she didn't care to ask to move. The medic noticed Alea's arrival and exclaimed, "Ta-da! I made it just for you and Lila." Silver Spot chuckled as she gestured wildly to her creation. She knew full well that Alea was going to hate it. "Oh, how lovely. A school calendar," Alea said sarcastically as she changed back into Saberclaw. The green robot shoved Silver Spot into the hangar wall playfully, and they chased each other out of the building and onto the field behind the hangar. "Are we going to have that championship tonight?" Iron Stripe asked as he propped himself up on his knees. "Oh, yes we are," Saberclaw said as she stood in between Iron Stripe and Silver Spot. "I'll go first." They played Monkey in the middle all night. At 7:30 in the morning, the 3 robots walked back into the hangar, laughing and playfully swatting at each other. "Saberclaw, maybe you shouldn't try to jump on me." Iron Stripe laughed as Saberclaw spit some grass out her mouth. "Ha ha ha, very funny, Iron Stripe." She answered sarcastically and tilted her head from side to side with exaggeration as she sarcastically laughed. The door into the hangar slid open to reveal Lila walking in. She had her hair brushed and a teal backpack on. She looked very put together. She was also carrying a green backpack in her hands. "Saberclaw, it's time to get you ready for school. Dad got you a green backpack since it's like your signature color." Lila exclaimed excitedly as she held up the green backpack. Saberclaw threw her head back and groaned out of irritation. Although she obeyed and changed into her human form. Alea walked up to Lila. The light from both the door into the field and the door Lila came through was shining in, lighting up the room warmly. "Did you get your morning G.E. refill yet?" Alea sighed and changed back into Saberclaw again. Over the past few weeks, Sam had discovered that the liquid the bots required to function and would bleed from them if injured was a compound made from gemstones. Although they didn't have to worry about getting rare gemstones because they found a way to make a synthetic version using water and certain common chemicals. G stood for gemstone energy. Saberclaw walked over to a bot-sized stand attached to the wall. The stand was basically some very high shelves filled with syringes containing the synthetic G, as well as a small and rather crude elevator that led from the ground to the shelf for the humans to use. Beside the bottom of the elevator, a bot-sized garage door that led to a large storage room filled with G reserves kept the shelves stocked. Saberclaw forcefully grabbed one of the syringes, showing that she was in a bad mood now, and injected it into her arm violently. She had done this so many times now that she didn't even flinch from the little pinch of the syringe. The glowing blue-green liquid from inside the syringe slowly drained into Saberclaw's arm. There were maybe 100 of such syringes on each of the 2 large shelves. Each of the syringes was already stocked with enough G to give a Sentiron energy for about 2 weeks. Lila simply said daily, previously to emphasize the fact that Saberclaw would feel like she needed it daily at school. 30 minutes passed as Alea tried on her backpack, and Lila gave her a rundown of the classes and what to do when they got to school. If you're confused, just find some people your age and follow them, Lila stated with enthusiasm as the two started walking to school. Lila, I don't think I will find any 1-month-olds at Grove Academy, Alea said with confusion as she gripped her backpack straps that were currently choking her shoulders. No, I mean people that look your age, Alea. Lila laughed as they rounded a corner. The school building was in sight now. Alea could see maybe 100 kids running from buses and cars into the building, as well as some walking. The school was built with white cinder blocks and had a light blue painted roof, and it had 3 buildings. The children were entering the main building, which was the largest one in the middle. There seemed to be fields for sports behind the 3 buildings and a gym on the side of the main building. The design of the buildings was very good. The school was beside a road, and wood surrounded it. Let's just hope you make some friends today, Lila said to Alea as they reached the steps into the school. Lila, I don't want friends. I just want to get the day over with. Alea sighed and walked through the 2 front doors. The sound inside the school overwhelmed Alea. There was the sound of slamming lockers and loud conversations. There were lockers lining every wall in a large hallway with doors leading to classrooms beside them. The hallway was very crowded with children. Almost everyone was either talking with a group of kids or meddling in their lockers. Alea watched Lila get swamped by a group of girls who high-fived her and immediately started chatting like Lila had been there the whole time. Alea shrugged as she got looks from the people around her. She saw them whispering and even listening on some of their conversations as she walked. The things they said included, "That's the new girl. Who is she? Why are her eyes that color? My teacher is so mean. And I just used AI for my homework." Alea ignored the hushed conversations and looked at the paper in her hand. It was a map of the school alongside a list of her classes. I don't understand what the point of these papers are. They're so confusing but are supposed to help me, Alea whispered to herself with frustration as she rounded a corner of the hallway. She was focused on the paper as she walked, so she didn't notice the group of girls in front of her. She bumped into a girl, and the girl turned around. "Hey, watch where you're oh," the girl exclaimed as the rest of the group turned to see the commotion. "Guys, look, it's the new girl." The girl waved her friends over, and soon, Alea was surrounded. The girl was maybe 5 feet and 5 inches tall, just a little shorter than Alea. She had medium brown skin with shoulder length, black, curly hair, and a bright smile. "My name is Haley, what's yours?" The girl, whose name was Haley, asked with curiosity. Alea opened her mouth and was about to answer when the other girls chimed in. "I'm Kaylin, by the way." Kaylin was another girl with dirty blonde, long, curly hair and fair skin. Her greeting smile made Alea feel calm. "And my name is Madeline, but my friends call me Maddie." Madeline piped as her long, straight, red hair waved along with her hands. She had green eyes that stood out from the others. Another girl, who was very tall and wore boots, spoke up. "I'm Sadie. Nice to meet you." She smiled warmly. The last girl, Casey, hugged Alea. "Welcome to Grove Academy. I'm Casey." She introduced herself with a friendly expression. All 5 of them looked at Alea for her name, and Alea's eyes went wide. There were 5 girls already asking for who she was. They seemed so nice, so it couldn't hurt to be acquaintances. "My name is Alea. My parents can't take care of me right now, so I'm staying with my friend, Lila. She's in 8th grade, in case you're wondering," Alea said with a rehearsed smile. Lila and Alea had come up with this excuse on the way to school. "Okay." Kaylin trailed off at the unusual number of details she just received. "Anyway, we should have the same classes, so you can stick with us for the day. Or for the rest of the year if you want to be friends with us," Haley proposed enthusiastically. Alea didn't know where any of the classes were, so maybe these girls are her best bet. "Sure, I needed help anyway." Alea shrugged as the girls escorted her to the homeroom class. Homeroom passed in the blink of an eye to Alea. She simply listened to her new friends tell her stories of their adventures together. It was mostly gossip and sleepover stories. First period, however, was a different story. Mr. Keller was the teacher for Chemistry 1, and he was a very interesting person. He very rarely talked about actual chemistry, and mainly just assigned busy work and talked about football. Alea sat in the back in her assigned seat. She was next to a boy that would not stop talking both to the teacher and to his friends. Does he not have to breathe, too? She asked herself. She knew that was impossible, though. He just talked so much that it confused Alea. The transition to second period was terrifying. Alea had been blown up, smacked down, and even almost died as Saberclaw, but the hallway was a treacherous path to her despite all of that. Kids were shoving each other and yelling as they tried to push past each other. There was no room to spread out one's arms, even a little. After much struggle, Alea managed to get to Mrs. Azaf's class. She sat on the side of the classroom away with Casey to her left and the wall to her right. She enjoyed this because she could lean on the wall and relax a little. You're going to love Mrs. Azaf, Alea. Casey began talking with Alea, but was interrupted by Mrs. Azaf telling the class to get out their language books. Second period was language and spelling for Alea and her new friends. Casey was right. Alea did enjoy language and spelling quite a bit. Girl, Mrs. Azaf loves you, Haley added as they made their way through the hallways again to get to third period. By the time lunch rolled around, Alea was actually enjoying school. There were no assigned seats in third period, so Alea got to sit beside all 5 of her friends. However, when she sat down, she had gotten weird looks from the group of girls beside her. Alea didn't know who any of them were, but they looked like she had just insulted their whole bloodline. Alea was talking to her friends at the time, so she just ignored it. Alea didn't know what to do. She hadn't packed any lunch because she didn't eat. She had human DNA, but wasn't entirely human, so she doesn't eat. The group of girls were looking at her weird as they ate their lunch, but Alea just sat awkwardly. Where is your food? Sadie asked between bites of her beef stroganoff. Yeah, you haven't eaten a thing all day, Madeline added after she sipped her water. I just had a big breakfast, Alea answered nervously. It's okay, girl. You could just tell us if you forgot to pack or order lunch. Kaylin concluded as the others nodded their approval. Alea looked at all of their faces. They were expecting her to agree, so she did. Yeah, that's what happened. I'm not hungry anyway, so it works out, I guess. The girls shrugged. They had gotten to the cafeteria early, so other kids were just now filing in. For girls entered the cafeteria and looked around violently. Alea recognized them as the group from third period. One of them, the one who seemed to be leading the rest, was blonde and stormed over as soon as she laid eyes on Alea. Instinctively, Alea balled her fist and gritted her teeth once she identified the girl as a threat. The angry girl reached their table and slammed her hands flat on the top of the table. Well, look who the idiots dragged in this time. The girl smiled cruelly at Alea's friends, and the rude girl's friends laughed. Listen, new girl, she looked directly at Alea. You've really got some nerve coming into my school and taking my seat. Oh, that was why she looked at Alea with such hatred in third period when she sat down. Alea hadn't realized this until now. Oh, my bad. I didn't realize you owned that seat. Alea taunted back at the girl, matching her energy. Alea's friends wouldn't make eye contact or sound during this event until now. Yeah, Rosalind, back off, Haley said with her confidence rising along with the tension. The blonde, Rosalind, twisted her face in anger, creasing her perfect makeup. The table of boys behind them was now chanting, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" Rosalind looked at the boys, then looked at Alea, then scrunched her nose and pushed the table back a little as she huffed with frustration. Rosalind's group of girls gave disgusted looks at Alea and then walked back to their table behind their queen bee. Alea's friends had gone silent again. Alea was riled up too much to let it go like they did. Who was that? She asked, irritated. Casey looked up from her sandwich and spoke in a hushed voice. That was Rosalind Johansson. She is the principal's daughter and is as entitled as a princess. No one likes her except her little group of cronies. She thinks she runs the school because her dad will give her anything she wants even if she terrorizes people. Alea could tell that her group didn't like this Rosalind girl. Then, Alea wasn't sure why, but she turned around just in time to see a boy walk into the cafeteria. He had deep blue jeans and a plain, blue t-shirt. He had light skin and black, short hair with a widow's peak. His hair seemed to flow with his strides, making him look majestic without trying. He had a strong jawline, and his slightly baggy shirt bounced a little when he walked. He walked up to the counter and picked up his pre-prepared food tray. He made eye contact with Alea, and she saw his eyes clearly. They were mysterious and lazily closed just enough to make him look enticing. His eyes were a barely natural, bright blue that seemed to captivate Alea. He puffed out his chest a little as he walked by her, and his eyes drifted to Alea's table to get a good look at her. This only lasted for a moment, however, and he sat down at a table full of other boys that was far away from Alea's table. The girls at Alea's table all started laughing at once, as if something insanely funny had just happened. "Alea, your face was priceless," Haley said between gasps of air because she was laughing so hard. "Girl, that is love at first sight," Kaylin teased. "You gonna go over there and ask him out yet?" Madeline said as she smiled and playfully put her hand on Alea's shoulder. Casey lightly hit Madeline for her comment and explained, "Y'all, of course she has a crush on him." She emphasized him for some reason. "Who was that?" Alea stuttered, which made the group laugh even harder. Alea could feel her cheeks heating up as she felt a lovely warmth in her chest. The feeling actually caught her off guard. She had never felt anything like this before. What in the world was happening? Once the girls managed to compose themselves, Sadie explained, "His name is Callum. He is possibly the cutest boy you will ever meet, and apparently, he is new here as well. At least 10 girls have already tried getting his attention, even Rosalind, but he didn't seem to care for any of them. But the way he looked at you," she put her nail in her teeth, smiled, and cooed at Alea. All of the girls squealed in unison. "We got you, girl. You're going to be talking to him by the end of the week." Haley smiled as she said that. After everyone finished lunch, they went to 4th period. It was Mr. Callie made the class run laps, and Alea tried to keep herself in the middle of the crowd so that she didn't look like she was running unusually fast or too slow. She couldn't keep her eyes off Callum, who was in the front of the group. She also couldn't shake that fuzzy feeling that she had gotten when she first saw him. At the end of the class, she was taking her gym shoes off when she felt the presence of someone approaching her. "I saw you looking at me during the running," said a semi-deep and slightly familiar voice behind her. Alea turned and saw Callum standing beside her as she untied her shoes. I don't," she began, but he interrupted her. "You and I are the only ones not panting. What's your name?" Alea could feel herself getting excited, but she managed to keep her voice calm. "My name is Alea. It's nice to meet you." He sat down beside her. "Alea, that is a beautiful name. It suits you. I'm Callum if you didn't already hear that from someone else." Alea felt her face heating up again. She knew she couldn't keep herself under control anymore. However, like they had read her mind, Kaylin and Haley rushed over and grabbed Alea by the hand. "You know, Callum," Kaylin said, "Alea and Haley need to go put our gym shoes away." Haley began dragging Alea away from Callum, out of the gym, and to their lockers to put their shoes away. All 3 girls squealed when they reached their lockers, including Alea. "He was 100% flirting with you," Kaylin cooed as Haley did her best impression of Callum. "He was all like, 'Your name is pretty. It suits you.' And he looked at you with such intention." They were celebrating at their lockers when Madeline, Casey, and Sadie appeared behind them. "The bell is about to ring, so we should probably go back to the gym to get our stuff, but, Alea, you have some storytelling to do," Sadie exclaimed as all the girls rushed back to the gym. The rest of the school day passed in a flash. The final bell rang, and Alea walked out of school and met Lila in the parking lot. "Well, how did it go?" Lila asked as they started walking back to their base. Alea looked at Lila with wide and tired eyes. "It was awesome. I made some new friends and met Rosalind. She was mean, but I don't really care about her. I have a little friend group of 6, including me now, and there was this boy." Lila interrupted her. "Slow down and tell me everything." They walked home together as they both told each other about their days.